Good evening, everybody, on the Rock Doc, and this is.
Hi, I'm Gabe.
Hope you're having a great night. Tonight we've got a. Oh, you better sit down and take notes. We're gonna have to go back over this because this may be a four-parter. I'm not sure yet. This is gonna be a big one, but
Yeah.
we're going to talk about something I think is going to be controversial, like many things we discuss. Or we're talking about the end times events, Book of Revelation again, and how so many people we want to talk about the multiple comets slash asteroids, possibly mountains, and interpretation of these things.
Specifically, like people were talking about Wormwood a lot, and we were watching a video, and someone was talking about the Bible passages that were talking about Wormwood, and he goes, "It's this is one event in which a meteorite crashes, turns the water to blood, and so on and so forth." And as he was explaining this, he goes, he's saying it's one event, and I'm looking at the verses on screen as he's talking about this, going, that's clearly more than one event. Like, I mean, and the thing is that for my whole life, it feels like every single person has interpreted as one event. So he's like, Wormwood will calm down. It does this, this, and that. And I was like, I never even thought about it as anything different until the words right there on my screen. I went, no. He's literally reading the verses out loud and going, this is one event. It's like, there's clearly multiple events. So I want to like show those off for you guys.
Did you have the verse there?
Yeah. Did you want me to use the King James?
Yeah, or New King James.
Okay. So he was talking about the seven trumpets, and basically this passage right here, and a second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and a third part of the sea became blood. And so he was saying that this was Wormwood. However, he didn't even go to explain the third angel, and he goes, this is the same thing, when if you read it, it's clearly not. So, and the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as if it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the waters, and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. Essentially, you look at these two verses, see if you can get both on screen. And the angel sounded, and a great mountain burning with fire. But then the third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning as if it were a lamp. And so that is the one called Wormwood. The star is called Wormwood. And then the other one is a great burning mountain.
Don't you think that the author would have known the difference, even in his day, between a star and a mountain?
Yeah. Well, not like that, but so many people commonly conflate those two events as a singular event. And in fact, how did he describe it? He said it was one event, and this is how it works.
Yeah, and this seems to sum up most common beliefs, but that it's that all of this is one singular event, that it's an asteroid coming to impact the Earth, and it throws off a part of itself, hits the Earth, and it turns the sky black. That's all. They interpret this as all one singular event that goes like that.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's clearly two events because if there's two clearly distinct angels sounding, then there's the difference in name between a great mountain burning and a great star. So there's that distinction. There's two direct distinguishing elements to make you go, okay, no, these are two separate events. And even crazier, besides that, there's also the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth. This is the fifth angel. I'm actually skipping the third, or skipping the fourth angel to get to the fifth angel, and another star is mentioned to fall from heaven. So that's even more distinguishing.
Wait a minute. There's three?
Yeah.
3 separate events here. So I had to write this down because, and he can't do anything because Cuddles is on him. So we have 3 separate events / asteroids / stars. The first one is a mountain, the burning mountain thrown into the sea. The second is Wormwood, separate event. And the third is called Abaddon,
And he holds the keys to the bottomless
to the
pit.
bottomless pit. And there's also a second name for that. They're one and the same. What was the second name? It's Abaddon and
Apollyon.
Apollyon
There
means the destroyer. So, yeah, it says there in verse 11. And we'll put up this complete verse in the notes for you guys to look at it, and you can also look at it while we're talking. But anyways, as he's pointing this out to me, I'm watching this original video from a teacher, and I went, what?
Yeah, it was like everything he said was wrong.
I've been studying Revelation since I could read, and it's always confused me. And I'm going, I always thought it was at least two of those were separate events. I got to, but every Bible teacher I knew goes, no, it's describing a singular event. And they come up with this because much like the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John is different views of some of the same events. But Revelation is not that way. It's not different views of the same event. It's a single author. So it never made sense to me. So it was like sometimes you need a second person to go, duh.
Yeah. It was like one of those things where I thought about getting this whiteboard and writing out exactly as they explained in the verses, going, these can't be the same thing.
Yeah.
Because it's specifically mentioning a great mountain burning with fire as one, then a great star falling from heaven as another one. Then it says another star falling from heaven to earth, which means that there's a distinction between the first one being great mountain and the second and third one being stars. Mm-hmm. So there's even further distinguishing between those things. So there's no way you can conflate them as the same event when even the author tried to make sure that the burning mountain was a very specific phrasing to separate it from being a star.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, obviously he knew that there was a difference. So people try to say, maybe he was just describing a comet falling to Earth and being thrown into the ocean, except that he says the second angel, he mentions it's a star. So obviously whatever the two things are, they're different things. They're not both the same star.
And we can go further into this. The second angel sounded, and there was a great mountain burning with fire cast into the sea. But the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as if for a lamp. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. So the star has a name, but the mountain doesn't.
Yep.
That at first seems like this is kind of nothing until you realize that the second star also has a name, which is Abaddon. So both
true.
stars have a name, but the mountain does not. So there's even further distinguishing that stars have names, but a mountain is just a mountain on fire.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, you have to look between the lines, not that you really are, but reading between the lines. But he's right. You have to look at parallels because there's obviously, he's right, they're both named. The mountain is not named. If it was a star, it'd have a name like the other two. And obviously there's three events here. Yeah. It's shocking that it's not read when people study it as just reading it. If you were reading a story or if you read this in a novel, you go, yeah, there's three events.
Yeah.
So it's amazing that doesn't happen in Bible study. But it doesn't. So sometimes you need somebody else just to point out the obvious.
Yeah, it is. It's like basically what people normally think of is there's one angel sounds a trumpet and something happens. Then an angel sounds a trumpet and part of a thing happens. Then another angel sounds a trumpet and then another section of the same thing happens. Then something unrelated happens for the fourth trumpet. Then the third angel or the fifth angel sounds in the final part. The previous thing happens. It's like that doesn't make any sense. Every time a angel sounds his trumpet, an event happens. Except for when it comes to the meteor, they go, well, these three trumpets all happen to the same event. Wouldn't there only be one trumpet then?
Yeah, there'd be no point to have the other trumpets. What is this, a repeat? Like in Galaxy Quest. Let me repeat the computer. Is it that kind of situation?
It's like previously on.
Yeah. So that's why I was saying it's not the author seeing this from three different angles, the same event. It's clearly different events. And, we were discussing this too, but clearly all the names have meanings and they correlate to many different things. I didn't know if you wanted to go there yet, but...
Well, I want to really quickly mention too that there's so many different things that we were noticing about these passages. you should just look them up and start thinking about these differently. For instance, because because it was the great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and a third part of the sea became blood. So it was cast into the sea, which many people believe it's a meteor falling and hitting and impacting the ocean. But then when you go to the name of the star is called, the Wormwood, there fell a great star from heaven, burning as if it were a lamp. So it's written differently, saying it fell from heaven.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go to the other star. I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth.
Yeah.
So both stars, they're referred to as stars, and they're both referred to as falling from heaven unto the earth. Yet the great mountain burning with fire was only cast into the sea, and it uses casting, not falling. So then there's more distinguishing with that. And if you just go right back up here, there is the angel came and stood at the altar having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with prayers of all saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense, which came with prayers of saints, ascended up before God out of the angel's hand. And the angel took the censer, filled it with fire of the altar, and cast it into the earth. And there were voices, thunderings, lightnings, and an earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's the word again, cast. This time it was into the earth, much like it was cast into the ocean. So now there's two verses with the parallel of cast, and then two verses of fell from heaven.
True.
And so this one, it was angel took the censer and filled it with fire of the altar and cast it into the earth, and there were voices, thunderings, lightnings, and an earthquake. Now highlight here earthquake, because an earthquake is not something that's external from the earth. It is the earth itself. And so when he casts this into the earth, it causes thunderings, lightnings, and earthquakes, stuff that's on earth, whereas the stars are specifically said to fall from heaven.
Well, and an earthquake could certainly cause a mountain to fall.
Yes, so my thought is that the second angel, when it says it was a great mountain burning fire was cast into the sea, people are interpreting it as falling from heaven and falling and landing in the sea. It was cast into the sea. My thought is it's possible that if you take the earthquake reference earlier, maybe this is something within the earth, like a volcano, and its contents of like magma or sulfur is being cast into the sea, but from below. That way it's not falling from heaven, as the other ones were told, and how an asteroid would be explained to be. It's something else being cast into the sea, but from a different location.
Yeah.
So, basically, if you were to grab a handful of mud or sand and hold it in your hand, and then put your hand underneath the water, and then let go of it, that would still be counted as casting it into the sea, right? So it doesn't have to be done from above and drop down to be a casting into it, right?
Well, yeah, if you're dropping mud into the water, it's still above the water.
No, you're putting you're putting your hand below the surface of the water, then tossing it out.
Well, I mean, technically that's like dispersion, but
Yeah, but they don't refer to it as that in the Bible, do they? Can you think of any passages where something happens underneath the water?
Not really, but I think you'd have to pull.
Because I would think casting.
Any time that cast was, because like I'm sure you cast, like when you fish. You cast, or the Bible will talk about casting a net. It's always thrown out.
Yeah.
Out.
And that's what a volcano does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my thought is, it's a great mountain burning with fire, and it's casting out stuff into the ocean if it's under. So
well, yeah, that certainly could be a volcanic eruption, and
it could be like the Ring of Fire or something. That's a lot of people do theorize about that.
Yeah. And
it would make sense that a third part of the sea became blood when it's the Ring of Fire. Is this erupting magma? Yeah. Third part had life died. Third part of the ships were destroyed. That was another thing too.
Well, the ring of fire going off would certainly cause all that.
Yeah.
But I think when it says a great mountain, it's singular.
Yeah, that could be
because it says
too.
a great mountain, and not that you'd still have to go back to the original Greek and all that to be sure. You must make sure it was translated right. It didn't say mountains or things
Yeah.
like that. So you have to definitely dig deeper into
Well, didn't
things.
you also say like the Himalayas? There was a what's it called? The like tallest mountain in the world, Mount.
Is that Kilimanjaro?
No, you know the famous one. What's it called? Why can't I remember it?
Everest?
Everest. Yes. Did you say Mount Everest is actually a volcano that's inactive?
Well, all of them are. All mountains had to have
Not
been,
all mountains.
you know,
Surely
they
not
had to
all.
have been volcanoes at one point.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, I mean, it's if it's the Great Mountain, it can't be like Mount Rainier, pretty great, but it's not the great. It has to be something the world would consider a great mountain. So he's right. It'd have to be something of like Everest, Kilimanjaro, one of these big,
Yeah.
you know, mountains that everybody would take notice if it did something.
Yeah. It's like in a grand scheme of things, if it were a unnamed mountain, then it's probably a hill. You know, in comparison, like if this is great enough to have a name.
Yeah.
Although it's not named. In fact, that's the other thing too. Is the other ones were named. This one isn't.
That always made me wonder.
So it may actually not even be all that large, but it has to be large enough in order to affect a third part of the sea.
Well, another hypothesis is it may not have been named at the time, so maybe it's created. Like a new volcano comes up and is created. That can happen,
Yeah.
in theory. Because it doesn't have a name. It may not have existed at the time that he wrote it.
Maybe the San Andreas Fault splits open and then a mountain springs out from the
Yeah.
explosion of magma.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things you can theorize. I mean, you know, but the main thing was definitely multiple separate events, not one event.
Yeah, and it's just there was something else about this too. Like there were so many things to go over. Like we were talking about what Wormwood was, the bitters and all that. Was there anything you want to say specifically while we're here?
Look at notes.
Oh yeah, here's another one I noticed too. When we're going to the fifth angel sounding, and the star fell from heaven, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. That one. It says he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go back up here, before the fourth angel sounded, and in the third part the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened, and the day showed not for a third part of it, and the night likewise.
And like you pointed out with that verse, smitten, they're hit with something.
Here's the thing: a lot of people theorize that something else happens on the earth to cause the darkening of the third part of the sun and the third part of the moon. But when you go back to the other one, the bottomless pit opens up a smoke out of the pits. It says the sun and air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit.
And that obviously happens after the other event.
Yeah, but here's my point though. It says the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke, saying there's a direct connection there, because it needs to distinguish itself from the darkening of the sun and moon and the fourth angel's trumpet, which means the fourth angel can't be something happening in the atmosphere. It has to be the actual sun and moon are hit by something.
And this is one of the things that they bleed this whole chapter together, because they think all of these things happening are effects from the first asteroid. But if you look at verse, I'm far away here, 12, clearly all these things happen before the fifth angel. So, and he pointed out...
In fact, the fifth angel is even separated by chapter.
Yeah. Well, and it even points out that it says it was smitten, which means something hits the sun, something hits the moon, something destroys the third part of the stars. It's not that everyone always interprets it as backwards. I've heard this over and over and over, that verse 9 happens before verse, so chapter 9. Anyways, they always say that these are all because we can't see them because of the smoke of the pit, that we can't see a third of the stars, a third of the sun, but that's out of order. Yeah. So it's...
And not only that, but he specifically says the furnace of the pit creates smoke that blots out the sun, which means he understands the difference between the sun being obscured by something and the sun itself being hit and dimmed.
Well, I'm to throw another bunny trail in here because some of you out there have heard this. Many people try to say, and there's no biblical interpretation whatsoever that can come up with this, they think that the star falling from heaven to the bottomless pit is Satan, like he's falling again. I've heard that repeatedly. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
People misinterpret it. They'll say when they look at Satan fell, they go, well, he fell in Revelation. I'm like, and I've heard people point out this verse to say that that's Satan that's falling from heaven, but that makes no sense at all because he's already here on earth. So how can he fall? That would mean he fell twice. So there's no biblical aspect at all that could possibly, come up with that interpretation. There just isn't. But I hear it all the time. So I just want to throw that in there, because it's just one of the things I hear a lot. So, think of things logically when you're reading this. Read it in order. Like he's pointing out, if you read it and you compare to the other verses, there's a consistency here. That just doesn't seem to be in a lot of the teachings about the chapter.
Yeah. And everything, too, that Dad noticed was that the locusts that came from the bottomless pit were commanded that they should not hurt the grass of the earth. Mm-hmm. But if you go earlier, it says the first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth, and the third part of trees was burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up. So that happens. And then it's told that the locusts were not allowed to touch the grass of the earth.
Well, grass would grow back.
Yeah, but that's what we're saying. But here's the difference too. One is considered grass. The other one's considered green grass. And so one is it's probably a livelier grass. The other one is a more weed-like maybe. So they're saying this don't touch any of the grass. The other one is all the useful grass that got burnt up. Yeah. Another thing Dad said was that when grass gets something on it that causes it to brown, it's considered burnt up. So even though the grass is still there, it has died because of some oil spill or something. I don't know.
Yeah, or you see grass, that's been in a drought and it just completely turns brown and breaks.
Yep, and so that is called being burnt up too. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that is true to how they use the terminology though. But the point is, it's also possible that the grass is not burnt up and is now no longer there, but instead it's been browned and has been killed off, but it's still there.
Yeah. Well, let's talk more about the two stars, because, the mountain, I think, it is what it is. I think we covered that a little bit, but the exciting thing is going to be the two stars. So, Wormwood, first, we have a couple of clues throughout history, not modern history, actually, but Chernobyl, the nuclear accident and everything, Chernobyl translates to Wormwood. So some people had made that correlation that maybe Wormwood has something to do with a nuclear accident. I've heard many times in my life that, it's a nuclear bomb or rocket nuclear tipped hits somewhere and poisons the earth, makes the waters bitter. Well, I've heard that one a lot.
Yeah, that's another thing too. I was talking about the Great Mountain Burning could be a volcano if the other ones were asteroids. Mm-hmm. However, it's also possible a Great Burning Mountain being cast in sea sounds a lot like an asteroid, so let's say it is. But then a star has to be something different because it's distinguishing, which means if the other one is an asteroid, then the star has to be something else. Maybe it is referring to a missile or something like that.
I've heard that. Although I think some current events that we've been aware of off and on are we're going to talk about something interesting here that the world's been aware of mildly since 2004, but it's come back into the news recently with a vengeance. And I think very much after research that this correlates to Wormwood. This very much could be it. And this gets kind of crazy, and this is where I was saying we're going to go, maybe into some things that are, but this is all because we want you to research. Don't take our word for it. We're just giving you some bunny trails and some research points to start looking for yourself. And, we could discuss this for the rest of eternity, but, and I heard this on several programs, and I had to do further research, but there's and it's a comet, I believe, or an asteroid. I'm sure there's a difference. Is it a comet or an asteroid? Asteroid. Called Apophis, and it's come into the news more recently because there's just been NASA kind of came out and denied that it would hit us suddenly, which made everyone go, "What? Were we in danger of being hit? Why would you suddenly say, don't worry, it's going to come close enough to clip our satellites and just clip our atmosphere, but it's not going to hit us?" And even Neil deGrasse Tyson and many other scientists have urged the White House to recalculate those trajectories. They believe it'll hit. It's very interesting, and Gabe's got it pulled up there when it's due to hit. I heard April 13th, 2029. I went, what day of the week is that? And I just knew it was going to be a Friday. It's a Friday. Friday the 13th. And if you know the history of Friday the 13th with the Templars and Jacques de Molay, very interesting. But more interesting is the name of the asteroid and what it means.
So they've given it the name Apophis, which if you go to the meaning of that, it's right here. Apophis, also known as Apep, is the great serpent, enemy of the sun god Ra in ancient Egyptian religion. The sun was Ra's great barge which sailed through the sky from dawn to dusk and then descended into the underworld. As it sailed through the darkness, it was attacked by Apophis, who sought to kill Ra and prevent sunrise.
And when we saw prevent sunrise, and I looked into this further, I went, kind of like darkening the sun and, some of those things. But the timing is very interesting as well. So, I mean, you have the meaning is interesting. Great serpent. You talk in Revelation a lot about the dragon, things like that. Satan, the great serpent. It was kind of like, ooh, that's interesting that this happens to be named Apophis and have these meanings and the timing. Even some other biblical scholars are starting to say this is probably it. There's too many things lining up. So he mentioned, let's see, I want to make sure we didn't miss anything on the meaning. I think that was it.
Also,
you were looking at the numbers.
Well, also, really quickly, I want to mention too is we don't actually know if this is Wormwood. It could also be Abaddon or the other star to open the gates to bottomless pits. Mm-hmm. Especially since that is the one that causes the blotting of the sun, isn't it? Fruit the smoke.
Yes.
And that one is to prevent the sun. So it's kind of a thing that's kind of going before. So I don't know. We're not quite sure if it's which one of the stars it is. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so another thing too is we would decide to look at the numbers, which
we're really into biblical numbers, and if you want a reference for that, if you can get this, I've probably gotten 20 copies of this book over the years because I keep giving them out. But this book right here, Biblical Mathematics, is just about the best introduction and reference for numbers. I'm constantly just going to the chart at the front. And if you start looking at the, numbers, sorry about that, and the meaning, the world changes. Seriously, it does. Yeah. And so we that's what we're using when we mention biblical numbers, when we talk about numbers.
Yeah, and we will be doing a video on numerology soon enough because it's one of those things where at first it's kind of
numerology.
Yeah, at first it's something that sounds a little crazy out there or doesn't have any particular meaning, but over time we start realizing there seems to be something to it.
People hear numerology, they think of the occult practice, and I think that's why this guy called it biblical mathematics. It's the study of numbers and how they relate to different things, and so
the best way
it just screams at us when we see numbers. We have to look them up.
The best way to explain it is that even in the Bible, God is explicit in using numbers. There is the Holy Trinity, which is 3. Then 3 days he rose. Jesus is known to be 33 when he died.
John 3:16.
Yeah, there seems to be a 3 related to God in every form. Then you have the 7 being used a lot. For instance, the Israelites had to walk around Jericho 7 times or 7 days, and that was explicitly the specific number that God told them to do it in, and it only worked after the 7th day.
And people are really, if they're not aware of numbers, they're all aware of 666 and Revelation, and they've been trying to figure that out as far as numbers go. So
even if you don't think you're into numerology, you already are, because everyone knows about 666.
Yeah, and you have to go beyond that, because if you don't look at math and numbers in the Bible, you missed a complete picture. So
we'll definitely
get into that. This is a teaser. So, but he wanted to look up, tell him what you thought about the number of this. They give asteroids numbers is 99942. So, what hit you with those numbers?
My brain immediately skipped to 999, went to 42. Was like, that seems familiar in some way. So I started thinking about that. However, I didn't also look at 999. I was like, well, that's 666 upside down.
But 9, as Dad pointed out, is fruit of the Spirit, divine completeness. So that's 3 times of divine completeness. And then 42 is the Lord's advent, or could also mean Israel's oppression. But it's almost like that is saying...
Advent. What does advent mean? I can't remember.
The coming, like second coming.
Okay, yeah.
So it's almost...
wow, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like it's screaming at you. And that's why I said these were lining up, and that there's so many things that can't be coincidence.
Advent is oftentimes used for major events of like a meteor hitting the Earth or something. Yeah. So it's usually referred to them as Advents.
Well, you think like of Christmas, an Advent calendar, you count the days until Christmas, so it's an event coming.
Yeah.
So that's just a quick way to explain it for those who aren't sure what we're talking about. But again, there's so many different details with this. Now,
also in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, 42 is the number for the life, the universe, and everything. That's what drew me into looking at it. So it seems so familiar now. I just remembered. It's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Not canon or biblical, in any way, but a good guide. Yeah, so we're movie and book, nerds. So you're going to hear a lot of that kind of stuff. But it's again just crazy. In fact, if you look at the article there. It says, the Apophis asteroid fulfill the Wormwood prophecy. So, right there. Yeah, so a lot of people are starting to look at this, I think.
Hold on. It says a car-sized asteroid, but up here...
It's not car-sized.
It says it's over 300 meters. A human is 2 meters tall.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing, too. You'll notice the first thing it says is, will harmlessly pass.
Yeah, they're explicitly saying that in the article, almost to reassure people, because it's not going to be the case.
But this is happening in 2029, and if this, as he brought up, if this truly is, let's say, Wormwood, can't you calculate backwards 5 years and know the year of the rapture? And I've got several different people I know who are going, I think you can, which would be 2025, right?
Yeah.
We're not saying we're not in any way calling out dates. I know people do that.
Well, also because the Bible says you won't know the exact time and day.
But you'll know the season.
You know the season. And the thing is, we can go back 5 years, but we can't go back exactly within the 2025. Yeah. Because the meteor is hitting exactly on April 13th doesn't mean that 5 years prior it's going to be happening exactly on April 13th. Mm-hmm. But it'll happen within some season of that year. And if you
it's most commonly believed that it will happen during the Feast of Trumpets.
Yeah, that's what I was going to
Now, somebody else had said, gosh, Lord, help me remember this. It was going back to... It'll come to me. But there's other things that line up with that make you go,
Yeah, it lines up like really perfectly with the timing, the numbers of the dates, and the meaning behind the events too.
And everything is cyclical. So you have, obviously, you think about a lot of our biblical knowledge comes from Egypt and the enslavement of the Hebrews and all of that. And a lot of our world religions come out of and were changed from Egyptian worship. And now you have this is coming back with it's almost like revenge. Yeah.
Well, another thing too, I've totally forgot to mention too, is when we were talking about Apophis as the great serpent, and it's a great serpent in ancient Egyptian religion. But what it's talking about tends to feel like it has a connection to what we're talking about. And it's like, but it's a different religion. But it's entirely possible the Egyptians overheard the Hebrew slaves talk about Revelation, or perhaps at the very least were talking about their own beliefs, overheard them and adopted those beliefs into their own religion.
Well, they do
so
know
kind of
historically, they do know historically they did adopt some of their traditions and things. You got to think America has been around over 400 years. They were enslaved over 400 years. That's a long time of two cultures being together. There's no way things are not going to pass from food to, practices. It's just going to naturally happen.
Yeah.
We always think of, because we see the Ten Commandments, we think that they were enslaved for about a week or two, or a very short time, but it was 400 years. It was a very long time. Egypt obviously was a very successful civilization, so it's not a short time. And like he's right, they would have adopted, some of their beliefs. And so we find this a lot where people will find beliefs that are New Age or even satanic, whatever, or perverted, and they don't realize. They always say, "Oh, that came from Satan, and now we're trying to make that good." Half the time, it started with the Bible first, or started with Christians, and then was perverted, then stolen, and re-perverted. So, you have to go back further than you think to find the source and roots of things. So,
quick side thing. We can cut this out. I remember 2004 sound familiar. You said that something had to happen within a generation of the founding of Israel becoming a nation. And you said that was about 60 years?
The Bible says 40 years is a generation.
Okay, so then maybe I'm wrong. Because I was seeing 1948 was the Declaration of Israel. So
everybody born after 1988 is going to see the coming of the Lord if they live to their complete life. That's what it means.
Okay, so I was thinking that if you were to take the internet lifespan, it would have lined up perfectly with 2004. It was my thought. Because if we were to say it was 60 years, that would be 2008.
Yeah.
And it's like 4 years right before this. So I thought maybe that would be a thing, but I guess I was wrong. But
we consider a generation like 80. I think people live to be 83 now. It keeps going down.
80,
but biblically it says a generation's 40 years, so you have to count.
If it's 80, then that's 2020 something.
Yeah.
2028.
Well, that's what you got to figure is
again. I'm right. Then
he's right. If you add our current lifespan to Israel becoming a nation, you're getting close. It's getting very close.
All right. Well, I was saying this as an aside. So if you think that's correct,
no, we should leave it.
No, what I'm saying is we should restate it as, or do you want to leave it as?
Just leave it as is. It's late. Everyone's on the journey with us. know.
I just wasn't sure if you want to make it a more proper explanation.
How late is it exactly? It is 3 a.m.
Well, what a nice hour.
And this is my fault because I have to eat, believe it or not. And I've been living on protein shakes all week because I haven't had time to pre-cook my ridiculous meals that take a day to cook one sauce that I'll eat the whole week. So I was like, I have to make the sauce. Gotta make it the sauce, And I was like, so it's actually just cooling off now. So I'm like, let's get this done and, we'll make sauce while we do it. It's like I'm Italian, got to do it. Well, Sicilian, it's like South Italian.
Well, also, they always say 3 a.m. is the witching hour, or it's not a good hour. So what better time to be talking about the Bible? And, and like, it's 3 p.m. somewhere.
That's right. It's always, yeah. So it's, somebody's going to be up watching this while eating their afternoon tea and biscuits, So I hope we really give you something to chew on. I mean, we're in no way saying, boom, boom, we're right. This is 100% correct. We want you to dig into this yourself and not take anyone's word for it. Not ours, not a preacher. Read the Bible for yourself. Do the research for yourself.
Well, also, did you want to touch upon something to do with the name being an ancient Egyptian name? It also has some sort of connection with April 13th, Friday 13th?
Yeah, so this, we may have to touch on this later, and I wanted to be exact on this and easily pull up one page to show you a connection, but those of you that study history or other religions are going to know this, but it's very easy to look up. So pull up, if you can, history of Friday the 13th, or just Jacques de Molay. Basically, so long history. There's Jacques de Molay. He was the Grand Master of the Knights Templar. Everyone right now is going, oh, I knew it, the Knights Templar. No, this is not Oak Island, okay? So they're not in and around and behind everything. In fact, if you read the history of this event and not take it for they're behind everything, Illuminati and that whole crazy thing, if you look at this just purely as history, these people, this group of men, had more wrong done to them in a short time than any of us will ever know, and they deserve justice. And so I could not find it any more ironic that if this is Wormwood, that it's coming on this day,
on Friday the 13th.
On a Friday the 13th. And, they were put to death for heresies and things, and tortured, and they were forced to confess to things they never would by a religion that actually worships the family that Ra is in. So I find that ironic. It's like destiny maybe, and that's why I said things are cyclical. And when as soon as I looked up the name of this asteroid, I went, yep, that's it. Just because things like this happen. In fact, Jacques de Molay, as he was burning at the stake, pronounced a curse, in fact, and that's something people rarely do, but he proclaimed his innocence and a curse, and actually the temple that he was burned at the stake at, which was Notre Dame, burned down just about on the anniversary of his curse. So curses are very powerful things, and God very much grants justice to believers who've lived a righteous life, and I can promise he didn't just willy-nilly throw out a curse. He knew the power of a curse. So I am not a Knights Templar. I am not. Family is not. Well, maybe my husband's family. These kind of things. I've not studied it extensively, but because of my husband's history and things like that, and world history, his family, they're from France, and they were Huguenots and escaped religious persecution. So I study a lot of these things in connection to that. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding, but again, do your research on, we've got it pulled up here so you have the spelling and the dates. You may learn something different about Friday the 13th and about the Knights Templar. Basically, when you have the church's money, and you're in charge of, and you've invented the banking system, and you're running money all over the world, that's a pretty good reason to get rid of people. So that's justice, if you ask me, that it comes on a Friday the 13th. So whether it's going to hit us, I don't know. Again, different experts have actually said if it hit and their trajectories are correct, it's going to hit the worst part of the San Andreas Fault. So, that's kind of every horror movie out there that's a disaster movie kind of thing. But take comfort if you're a believer. You're not going to be here when this happens. This is obviously all after the rapture, and we're going to cover the rapture as well in another teaching, and maybe a couple of them. It's not something you can cover, so easily. You look like you're chewing on something.
So, I'd assume that when it says 13th October 1307,
yeah,
that's the Friday 13th, but it says that he died at a later date. Is that true? So he died 7 years later?
Yes, if I remember correctly, it was all the other, they had captured many of the Knights Templar. They did a mass murder kind of over so many months.
But he survived?
They kept him in prison, and he was the last one to go. That's why he pronounced a curse.
All right, but think about this. See the date?
The dates, I was just looking at them.
We want to know how many years it would be on a day that the meteor hits?
Yeah.
715.
Yeah.
Look what the number 15 is.
Rest. So perfection and rest. Yeah. Like I said, also, everything's connected.
Well, also the point is too that he died. He died in injustice. He didn't die with rest. And,
No.
And that's why he pronounced the curse, and that's why the whole Friday the 13th
is considered such an unlucky day
because it's an ongoing curse, and curses are often due to unrest.
And curses have to be satisfied. So and especially when a righteous man pronounces a curse, it has to be satisfied. It's an assignment. So, it's interesting. Like I said, there's a lot of mounting evidence that this could be it. Not saying for sure it is, but you start even digging further than this, you're going to find more evidence that makes you go, yep, that's it. So, and that will beg the question, if you're out there listening and you don't have strong, faith in our Lord, that fear might be coming upon you. The thing is if you are a believer in Yeshua Jesus, you're not going to be here when this happens. The issue and why we leave these videos are for those that are, as they always say, left behind. That's not a place you want to be. You definitely want to get out before this happens. And then how do you live your life? I've been hearing this question from a lot of people lately. Well, how am I going to live my life if I know I only have 4 or 5 years left? You're going to live it fast and hard. You're gonna, every moment matters at this point. I saw someone post today, we're not in the end times, we're in the last seconds. It's moving fast. And my husband pulled up a video. You might have overheard some noise. We had to have him shut it off. But he found just a video of the things that happened across the world in one day today. So many different floodings, explosions, different things. He couldn't even keep track. And this is now happening on a daily basis. So it's birth pains. I can't think of any other term. And we're in the birth pains. We're not in the tribulation. We're not, the nice thing is we're not appointed to wrath. The tribulation is God's wrath. And the Bible clearly says we're not appointed to wrath. So I used to be, and of course now we're going to the rapture subject, which we'll touch on more in depth. But
yeah, so I think
the next two videos,
denier. The next video is going to be numerology. The next one after that is going to be rapture.
Because you got to have the numerology to really understand. Heck, you need to understand astrology to understand Revelation.
But also because these two subjects are ones that a lot of people aren't really certain of. In fact, a lot of people even believe in the rapture. So I feel like we need to make a video about it just for the sake of it.
I was a rapture denier most of my whole life. I poured through Revelation over and over and over trying to prove to people there was no rapture. And my husband, God bless him, I mean, I must have argued with him over and over and over, and he said something and it hit me like a frying pan to the head. Not that he did, what he said did. And he goes, well, if God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and he got Lot out of Sodom and Gomorrah before he destroyed it, Noah out before he flooded the earth, he's like, isn't there a pattern emerging here? And I went, So I had to learn some things. You can't just read Revelation. I got Revelation for Dummies. I started pouring into everything, watching every teacher. And, my beloved pastor, Chris, he did weekly teachings. We went through every single verse, and
despite that, you still miss something as clear as there's 3 separate events, not one singular
that's the
viewer.
problem with studying it verse by verse. By the time it's been 4 weeks since you read it's hard to keep track. And I think this is what a lot of people do in church is they make it a series and you lose track. I think it should be taught in chapters, but you have to study Thessalonians and Ephesians and Daniel and other corresponding things to get the full picture, or you will not understand what's going on. So after I started doing that, and I'm like, oh yeah, and that, I firmly believe that that's correct. We're not appointed to wrath, and we're not going to be here. So, there's a huge comfort in that. And, I live my life every day like that doesn't matter, that I'm here, I'm doing what I need to do. But I know that, before SHTF, I'm going to be gone, and everyone I love is going with me. So we should even bring up where the animals go. I know that's a common question lately. I believe if you're saved, they do. Well, we can bring up the answer to that on another teaching. So, and I can back that up biblically. But what are you looking up? You got something?
Well, there was something that I was hoping, since we couldn't find the plant we were looking for.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to know if there's anybody watching the video who would know what it looks like, because we're going to get a picture. Because I was curious to see if it managed to correlate with the description of the beast.
I will pull it up on my old hard drive from my essential oil company. I have actual pictures.
Okay. Would you want to explain to them what I'm talking about then?
Yeah, so wormwood, the herb, it's interesting in relation. Obviously, they related it to the herb wormwood. And if you aren't familiar with wormwood, or artemisia is the other common term in essential oils, or artemisinin, you might have heard of the drink artemisia. Was it Artemisia?
Yeah. And
No,
it was like
Artemisinin. Yeah. So, anyways, it's a special liquor made from wormwood, and the difference between that and like your typical alcohol is if you drink too much of this. This is why it's illegal most places. I believe they just made it legal in the United States within the last 20 years again, but it can make you hallucinate. It does different things than regular alcohol would. It's very, very bitter, and it mentions how wormwood is bitter and it makes the waters bitter. I think, again, if you look in relation to the plant, it's yet another clue, as to what this is going to do to people. But the other thing, too, is the flowers on the particular plant mentioned in the Bible, and this is what he's talking about. It's called Draculinus, Dracula, or the dragon. And the flowers look like little dragon heads. So the problem is, if you scour the internet for the exact, it took me years to finally get these. I got them from a university when I had my essential oil company. We had the exact correct essential oil. I will dig them up and try to get them posted to this video. But it does look like little dragon heads. And I find that very interesting with Revelation, the dragon, things like that.
Well, my specific thought is that it says in Revelations that when where is it? Wormwood, it says a third of the waters became wormwood, and many men died from the water because it was made bitter. And then I had the secondary thought of the beast. It says that I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy.
Obviously, that's not the same beast as the beast.
Yes, but my thought is it rose up out of the sea, and it's explained if it was having horns and crowns. And then the wormwood says it turns the sea into wormwood, and you said wormwood looked like it had dragon heads. And this thing has 7 heads. My thought is he describing the plants or something, maybe?
Well, I'm going to throw a wrinkle in here. Verse, is that chapter 13, verse 1? If you look at the United Arab Emirates, it's literally grown out of the sea. They're terraforming the sea. It has 10 buildings that look like horns. It's almost literally a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns when you look at a picture.
That's interesting.
So,
but
just
the thing
not
is,
saying that that's what it means, but it's something I've noted.
But he says, and they worship the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. So my thought is maybe there's a connection to wormwood, but I wasn't quite sure.
Most people, again, biblical scholars, commonly believe the dragon either refers to the Catholic Church, or the harlot refers to the Catholic Church. There's a lot of different beliefs on that. So again, we'll have to tackle that. But
I had an interesting question about the harlots myself, and we can maybe make a video about it.
Yeah. Let's write that down so we don't forget.
Yeah, because there was something about her going into the forest or something like that, and it explained in such a way that even you were confused on what it meant.
So we'll do Revelation, the harlot. You know what else I'd like to do, because we mentioned astrology, is astrology in Revelation. A lot of these things they talk about, the woman and the dragon, things like that, they're constellations.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a firm understanding, the Magi finding baby Jesus, they did that through astrology. They understood those things. So and I'm not in any way saying that you should do or believe in astrology, but you have to understand the stars and their names because they're clearly mentioned in Revelation. So you have to have some knowledge and have somebody that has, real strong knowledge of all of those things. Might be very interesting. We might learn something very interesting.
Yeah, so like there's so much to go through. Like it's hard to keep track of everything. And I knew this would be a really long video, just on the subject of the 3-star or the 2 stars in the comet or asteroid or mountain or whatever that is. That alone has to fill up an hour, and like there's a lot of tangents to it, but it's all related to that, and just how far we can go with just that alone. Yeah. And there's still so much other stuff, like this Apophis asteroid too. It really seems to have opened our eyes to the description, the detail of those verses. Mm-hmm. They are starting to make more sense to the point where it's hard to deny that this might actually be Wormwood or the other one, Abaddon, or Apollyon, I think it's the Greek version. And the thing is, Abaddon, not super similar, but Apollyon,
pull back the verses. Are they actually the same thing?
Yes. Where is it?
Because it's interesting. It has 2 different names. Because the names. Let me look it up here.
Yeah,
unless you're faster.
They had meetings. They had a king over them, the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon.
Oh, okay.
But in Greek, he has the name Apollyon.
Okay.
But the thing is that there's another thing too I completely forgot to mention. It says, then the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star falling from heaven to the earth. To him was given the key to the bottomless pit. So to him, it seems to be referring to the star, and then it says, and he opened the bottomless pit. But then it says the king of the bottomless pit is Abaddon or Apollyon. So it's possible that the star has the key to open up the bottomless pit, and within the bottomless pit is the king Abaddon. I can't quite figure out if those are the same person or 2 separate people.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Have to do more research on it.
Because they had a king over them, the angel of the bottomless pits. But then up here, it says the 5th angel sounded, and a star fell, and the star to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. It doesn't say gave the 5th angel, so it's not like the 5th angel is Abaddon. Those have to be 2 separate people. But the star is either Abaddon, or the star to him was given the key to open the bottomless pit that had Abaddon in it.
Yeah.
So it's one or the other, and I can't figure it out.
Yeah.
So I'm referring to the star as Abaddon for now, but I'm not necessarily saying it is.
Right. Yeah.
Again, it's just because
more research.
Yeah. Only because it seems like the other one is named Wormwood, so the stars have names, it seemed to me.
Yeah.
But it's possible this one doesn't have a name.
True.
But yeah, that's why it's pretty tricky to go through these and really understand what's happening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we've kind of wrapped up where we're going to go with this one.
Oh, I don't know about that. I feel like there's still more to talk about. I just can't think of what it is right now because, we're tired.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think we could wrap this one up and do it like in sections like we were talking about here.
Yeah, and also I feel like if we kept going, we would find a bunny trail that would just go off in some other video.
And we'd be up 3 more hours.
Yeah. So I think it is the best ending point that we could possibly get.
Yeah. So, well, I guess we'll call it a wrap then. And
sure.
Yeah, so we love you guys. Like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends. Give us ideas or questions for future episodes. If there's something you want us to explore, we'll do our best to leave notes and things like that with each teaching. So anyways, we will see you next week.
All right, bye.